In the heart of Kentucky, a man is building an ark. He doesn't think he's the new Noah, but he does think the Bible story may in fact be factual, and he wants to open a theme park to make the case.
Archaeologists say writings on an ancient tablet confirm there was a global flood and an ark that carried animals.
Has the legendary Noah's Ark been found at last? The way we view faith, religion, history, and society may be significantly impacted by an important discovery made by Turkish archaeologists. They think they have found the remnants of a ship that looked like Noah's Ark. This discovery has the potential to upend our understanding of the biblical story and historical events, because it is consistent with ancient flood myths from many different cultures. According to archaeologists, there is a story of a disastrous flood in practically every significant civilization throughout history. It was during the excavation of a geological site that Turkish researchers recently discovered what they believe to be the remains of a vessel similar to Noah's Ark. It is written in the book of Genesis that Noah set out on a great quest to save all animals from a worldwide flood that would submerge the planet. He is said to have loaded 2 of each species onto a 150-meter-long ark. Tradition holds that Noah's Ark finally came to rest after the floodwaters subsided on the highlands of Ararat in modern-day eastern Turkey. It would seriously affect our view of faith, religion, history, and society if this discovery turned out to be the actual remnants of Noah's Ark as it is recorded in the Bible. A boat-shaped feature atop a mountainside in Turkey's Doğu region was first noticed by mapper İlhan Darupınar in 1959, which is when the story of this discovery started. Lately, Turkish and American scientists involved in the Noah's Ark search project assert that they have accumulated strong proof, indicating that this important historical relic is submerged at the Darupınar location. By using cutting-edge technology like ground-penetrating radar, GPR, and electrical resistivity, they have created 3D scans of the region. Preceding any excavation effort, these scans are said to have shown the existence of an artificially constructed boat-like structure underground. The proportions of the found building match those mentioned in the Bible for Noah's Ark, the research team claims. Even said, it is important to acknowledge that the book of Genesis, like many ancient books, has been translated and interpreted in a variety of ways throughout thousands of years, despite the persuasive nature of these statements. A critical analysis of the evidence about Noah's Ark is necessary in light of this evolution, while also considering the historical and cultural backgrounds of the respective writings. Intriguingly, the hunt for Noah's Ark reflects humanity's never-ending struggle to make sense of the disparities between traditional beliefs and contemporary scientific knowledge. In the Bible, Noah is told that God gave him the exact measurements for the ark: 300 cubits long, 30 cubits high, and 50 cubits wide. The length of the forearm, or around 18 inches, is called amma in Hebrew, and it is the equivalent of 1 cubit. It is written in the scriptures that the ark finally landed on Mount Ararat, a dormant volcano on the eastern edge of present-day Turkey. Approximately 30 kilometers to the south of this mountain is the Darupınar location. The project team's scientists and researchers feel that the measurements found in the biblical text are supported by the dimensions seen in the 3D scans, indicating that this may be Noah's Ark. Many in the scientific community are still dubious about these discoveries, though, as the relationship between science and religion has occasionally been tense. Several people have expressed doubt and disapproval about the discovery since it was made at the Darupınar site. The site's legitimacy as the location of Noah's Ark has been a topic of discussion for many years, with many people contesting it. The site was extensively studied by American researcher Ron Wyatt, who published multiple publications on his discoveries from the 1970s to the 1990s. The geologist Lawrence Collins contested Wyatt's findings in 1996, claiming that the structure was just a naturally occurring rock formation with an odd shape. Despite this, Wyatt's work was heavily criticized. A national park designation and a national protection order were imposed on the site by the Turkish Ministry of Culture in response to the site's considerable interest. There was no formal order to begin excavations, though, besides this designation. Consequently, the area has been the subject of ongoing investigation by many separate teams made up of Turkish and foreign scholars. Notwithstanding the continuous examination and doubt, these groups have persisted in their investigation of the place, adding to the larger discussion concerning the reality and whereabouts of Noah's Ark. Biblical tales of a vast flood sent by God to punish humanity for its sins are well known, and the only thing that survives the deluge is the story of Noah's Ark. The deluge, which destroyed every living thing on earth save for those on the ark, is described in the book of Genesis as lasting 40 days and nights. Numerous trips and looks for concrete proof of the ark's presence have been sparked by this story. A further source of mystery and controversy is the claims made by recent expeditions that they found tangible remnants in the mountainous regions of Iran and Turkey. Interesting physical evidence that points to the presence of Noah's Ark has been discovered during recent excursions. At the Durupinar location in Turkey, Ron Wyatt found what he thought to be pieces of the Ark in the 1980s. This discovery, however, deviates from the conventional wisdom that the Book of Genesis mentions Mount Ararat as the location of the Ark's landing. An additional element of intricacy to the quest is the Quran's reference to Mount Judy as the Ark's resting place. Wyatt's assertions have sparked a new round of discussion among academics and archaeologists, since the Durupinar find provides a different angle on the old story. Wyatt maintained that Noah's Ark was, in fact, the boat-shaped structure he had discovered. The shape's identification as a vessel by Wyatt seems to be supported by photographic data. The object's proportions and shape closely resemble conventional representations of ancient ships. Many historical and theological documents mention devastating flood episodes, which is consistent with the persuasive argument that a big ship could have come to rest on the slope of a mountain owing to a great flood. A notion like this gives the discovery a believable context and supports the theory that remnants of a large ship may have been left behind by a flood. Many scientists contend that Wyatt's boat-shaped object is a natural geological feature, despite its similarity to a ship. When a sequence of earthquakes caused rocks to rise to the surface, a formation that remarkably resembled a ship was formed. This is when the phenomenon was initially seen in 1948. This claim is supported by geologist Lawrence Collins, who points out that there isn't any petrified wood at the location. Rather, volcanic basalt and andesite, which are more consistent with geological processes than with the biblical story of Noah's Ark, make up the formation's internal components. Scholarly interest in the hunt for Noah's Ark has a long history. Scholars like Athanasius Kircher, a 17th century Jesuit scholar, spent a great deal of time throughout the Renaissance trying to figure out the enigma of the Ark. Kircher believed that the dimensions of the Ark incorporated divine laws of symmetry and proportion. Thus, he set out to replicate the Ark's design. His research included attempting to comprehend the intricate internal structure of a vessel that was supposedly able to contain every species of animal known to humanity. The foundation for later investigations on the dimensions and composition of the Ark was established by this early academic endeavor. Scholars have used cutting-edge methods and contemporary scientific technologies to explore and build upon past investigations in the modern era. Mount Ararat, which the Book of Genesis indicates is the place where the Ark came to rest after the floodwaters subsided, is still the center of attention for those searching for Noah's Ark. The story claims that the entire earth was drowned during the 150 days of the deluge. The Ararat Mountains became seen as the floods began to subside, offering the Ark a possible site to stay. This story has sparked a plethora of archaeological and geological inquiry, with scientists and adventurers searching the area for concrete proof of the Ark's presence. Mount Ararat, which is located in the extreme east of Turkey close to the Iranian border, has drawn a lot of attention because of its connection to the biblical tale. James Bryce, a British historian, discovered a 4-meter-long wooden slab on Ararat in 1876, sparking a lot of curiosity and conjecture. Ever since Bryce discovered it, the mountain has drawn Ark hunters from all over the world who are searching for solid proof of this fabled ship. There has been a great deal of interest in the building process and the materials utilized to create Noah's Ark. One of the most fascinating, yet misinterpreted details in the Bible is the reference to gopher wood. The Bible has only one instance of the term gopher wood, which is found in Genesis 6:14. For ages, academics and theologians have been uncertain about the true identification of this unique reference. Though diverse translations and interpretations have proposed a variety of wood species, from cedar to cypress, the precise composition of gopher wood is still unknown. A non-traditional hypothesis suggests that the wood found in gophers may actually be the coconut palm or Cocos nucifera. This tropical tree, which is indigenous to tropical countries like the Pacific, Indian, and Caribbean, is well known for producing coconut oil. Since the coconut palm is not indigenous to the ancient Near East, it initially appears to be an improbable possibility. On the other hand, some theories contend that trade or maritime interaction may have been the means of dispersing knowledge about the coconut palm and its wood. Because coconut palm wood is strong and water-resistant, it may be used as a material for seafaring vessels and meets the specifications needed to create an ark that is both waterproof and sturdy. Errors in language or translation may also contribute to the coconut palm's identification as gopher wood. The word gopher has been interpreted in different ways throughout history, which could be explained by its phonetic closeness to a different word entirely. It's possible that ancient networks and trade routes, especially between the Mesopotamians and the Egyptians, facilitated the introduction of exotic timbers into the areas that are typically connected to the biblical story. The endurance and resistance to decay of cypress and cedar make them both important in the context of ancient architecture. Particularly prized for its ability to withstand water, cypress was widely employed in the building of historically significant vessels. Additionally, cedar was a preferred building material due to its odor and resistance to rot. The biblical story and historical customs fit very nicely with the abundance of these woods that were available in the ancient Near East. That being said, gopher wood is more likely to relate to a kind of wood that is consistent with others that are recognized in the area. Even though the coconut palm explanation creates an interesting possibility, interpreting old texts and comprehending historical contexts can be challenging, as demonstrated by the riddle surrounding gopher wood. Explore the complexity of hypotheses and interpretations around ancient histories via the quest to discover the true identity of gopher wood. People are still fascinated by old secrets because the story of Noah's Ark, which is entwined with myth, reality, and academic speculation, enthralls people and stimulates curiosity. God gave exact directions that are detailed in depth in the Bible regarding the building of Noah's Ark. Genesis 6:14 states that Noah was given instructions to construct the ark out of gopher wood, inside and out, and with rooms. Somewhere in the Bible, the term pitch is translated as atonement, indicating a deeper symbolic significance that goes beyond its practical application as a waterproofing agent. A larger notion of salvation and divine providence is reflected in the pitch's role in assuring the ark's capacity to resist the flood, highlighting its protective purpose. As a sign of the exclusivity of redemption, the Bible states that the ark was to have a single door on its side. The people escaping the approaching judgment would only be those who passed through this one gateway. In addition to highlighting a theological argument regarding divine wrath and mercy, this lone door represents the one way to salvation. The Lord indicated that it was no longer possible for anybody else to enter the ark once Noah and his family had entered. This deed serves as further evidence that redemption is available up until the very last minute, at which point it is irreversibly lost. In the story, Noah plays a crucial part, building the ark under divine instructions and making sure his family and the animals were securely within were his responsibilities. Being warned for almost 70 years while building the ark emphasizes the concepts of patience and tenacity and faith, and Noah's obedience and faith are fundamental to the narrative. When combined with the final judgment, this extended forewarning represents both human accountability and divine patience. There are similarities between other historical and theological stories, such as the destruction of Jerusalem and the story of Noah's Ark. The New Testament claims that Jesus echoed Noah's apocalyptic flood warnings when he told the people of Jerusalem about the approaching devastation. Emphasizing the themes of judgment and the significance of paying attention to divine warnings, the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD provides a historical example of prophetic prophecies coming true. Bigger spiritual truths are symbolized by the Ark and the fall of Jerusalem. The demolishment of Jerusalem illustrates the effects of disobeying prophecies, while the Ark represents safety and deliverance from divine punishment. As it emphasizes the significance of following divine direction, the biblical story portrays salvation as a question of faith and obedience. The New Testament refers to Jesus Christ as the door to salvation, And in Christian theology, the ark is frequently seen as a symbol of Jesus. Christians are said to be rescued via Christ, just as Noah and his family were saved by entering the ark. The spiritual salvation made possible by Jesus is compared to the tangible salvation given by the ark in this analogy. Based on trust in Jesus Christ, one can receive salvation as a gift from God, according to what the New Testament teaches. The belief that salvation is dependent more on divine grace than on human effort is strengthened by this theological viewpoint. Christian redemption doctrine is powerfully metaphorically represented by the imagery of the ark, with its one door and its function as a haven from judgment. As Jesus is considered the ultimate haven from sin and condemnation, the ark represents a vehicle of escape from the flood. A more comprehensive understanding of divine providence and human reaction is reflected in the theological notion of salvation by a single path. Scholarly and theological investigation is still motivated by the account of Noah's Ark because of its intricate building instructions and deep significance. Human curiosity about the veracity of old stories is reflected in the endeavor to comprehend the components, construction, and theological importance of the Ark. The story of Noah's Ark is still a powerful and enduring part of the human cultural and spiritual legacy, regardless of one's opinion on the historically accurate building of the Ark or the theological significance of its symbolism. In addition, there has been much research and discussion on the specifics of the Ark's construction, including its size and the materials that were employed. 30 cubits high, 50 cubits wide, and 300 cubits long were the dimensions of the Ark. It is roughly 450 feet long, 75 feet broad, and 45 feet high in modern standards. Its size and strength imply a big, sturdy boat that can hold a lot of people and animals. The dimensions of Noah's Ark have been compared to those of ancient coffins, which were made of cypress wood because of its strength and resistance to decay, according to archaeologists. An interesting point is brought up by this comparison. Why is the Ark, a ship destined to bring about redemption, compared to a massive coffin? There has deep symbolism. In the same way, as coffins hold the dead until they are raised, the Ark might be understood as a symbolic coffin that represents baptism and burial with Christ. The teachings of the New Testament regarding salvation and baptism are consistent with this imagery. God told Noah to build the Ark with a window and to place it a cubit from the top. Additionally, the Ark was only to have one side door. A key theological argument is highlighted by the design. The solitary door stood for the only route to redemption, while the window represented a link to the skies. Noah could look up through the window and remind himself and everyone else reading the story to keep a heavenly perspective. This illustrates the spiritual reality that believers should maintain their attention on heavenly things, since they are sealed in Christ by the power of the Holy Spirit. God locked the door, meaning that after the window of opportunity closed, nobody could go in or out of the Ark. The finality of divine judgment and the assurance of salvation for those inside are symbolized by this sealing. Just as Christians are secure in their salvation through Christ, Noah and his family were assured total safety within the Ark by God's act of sealing the door. The New Testament's promise that believers are sealed with the Holy Spirit of promise is a reflection of this supernatural security. No one can take them from Jesus' hand, demonstrating the enduring and unavoidable nature of divine protection and salvation. All food that was to be consumed had to be gathered and brought into the Ark by Noah. This verse emphasizes how God provides for all of our needs, guaranteeing that Noah and the animals would have enough food to survive the deluge. This act of divine provision emphasizes a more general theological idea. Jesus provides for all needs in addition to offering salvation. Believers find both refuge and nourishment in Jesus, demonstrating the all-encompassing character of Christ's care. As the narrative of Noah's Ark illustrates, salvation is offered as a favor of grace. Ephesians 2:8-9, written by the Apostle Paul, states that redemption is by grace through faith and not by works. This idea is demonstrated in the story of the Ark, when Noah was accepted by the Lord not based on his works, but rather by God's grace. This generosity is represented by the Ark, which offers a way of salvation that is wholly God's doing. Noah and his family were saved solely by the grace of God. Crucial is the covenant that God made with Noah. God told Noah and his family to board the Ark, showing that salvation is a shared experience for those who follow God's will. This covenant illustrates the constancy of God's redemptive plan, which is evident throughout the Bible. Believers are rescued by forming a relationship with Christ, just as Noah was saved by entering the ark. In this way, Christ, who is the only way to eternal life, is symbolized by the ark. It is implied that God was inside the ark when God told Noah to come into the ark. This invitation is an indication of a heavenly presence that offers security and defense. The ark served as both a material and a spiritual haven, signifying that God's presence is a source of comfort and protection. Since Christ is referred to as the ark of salvation, offering both sanctuary and nourishment, believers find the greatest security in him. The fact that God closed the ark's entrance emphasizes the assurance of salvation even more. This supernatural deed indicates that once the deluge started, there was no longer any chance for salvation. The ark's door being sealed symbolizes both the finality of divine judgment and the assurance that salvation is guaranteed once God has delivered it. The idea that redemption is a gift that cannot be taken back by human effort is furthered by this depiction. The ark's significance as a symbol of Christ is noteworthy in Christian theology. Similar to the ark's single entrance, Jesus is referred to as the door leading to salvation. The idea that only Jesus can save a person is conveyed by this metaphor to the New Testament. Believers are saved by their faith in Jesus, just as Noah and his family were saved by their admittance into the ark. The comparison emphasizes the uniqueness and assurance of redemption via Christ. The biblical story also makes a comparison between the flood and the coming judgment. Except the animals in the ark, the entire planet and all living things were annihilated during the first judgment by water. Fire will bring about the second, foretold judgment, as 2 Peter 3:10-12. According to this verse, the world and heavens that are currently in place are set aside for fire in anticipation of the day of judgment and the annihilation of sinful people. The imminence of seeking sanctuary in Christ, the ultimate ark of salvation, is highlighted by the certainty of this impending judgment. Noah lived in a violent and corrupt society at the age of 500. He was regarded as a blameless and righteous man by his peers. His loyalty to God stood in stark contrast to humanity's moral decline and never-ending cycle of retaliation. Amid this pervasive corruption, Yahweh unveils his grand scheme. He wants to destroy everything on earth with a flood, leaving just Noah and his family as survivors. Noah has to build the ark, a gigantic boat, to survive. Yahweh first gives Noah instructions to bring 2 of each species of living creature, male and female, as well as enough food to sustain them. But soon after, this command is altered. Noah is now told to gather 7 pairs of every clean animal, 1 pair of every unclean animal, and 7 pairs of every bird, instead of just 2 of each animal. This change emphasizes how Noah's mission is always changing and how crucial it is to follow God's instructions precisely. With the assistance of his 3 sons, Noah spent a century building the ark, which is a massive endeavor. Finally finished, the ark was launched on the 17th day of the 2nd month in Noah's 600th year. The deluge starts when the heavens part, and floods burst forth from below the earth, pouring rain non-stop for 40 days and nights. All life not on board the ark is wiped off when the earth is submerged by floodwaters. The seas hold out for 150 days before beginning to recede. It takes several more months for the floods to completely recede, and the mountain peaks to rise once the ark finally comes to rest atop the Ararat Mountains. Noah and his family leave the ark after spending more than a year there to repopulate a world that the flood has altered. The narrative of Noah's journey is a vast epic of tragedy, survival, and atonement. Surprisingly, Noah's tale is not exclusive to the Bible. Anthropologists have identified more than 250 flood myths from various tribes throughout the world. Many of them remarkably resemble the story found in Genesis. The ubiquity of these flood legends is noted by social anthropologists Kai Michel and Karel Schick, who also point out that civilizations around large rivers, such as the Yangtze, Tigris, Euphrates, Ganges, and Nile, were especially vulnerable to floods. Considering how vital these rivers were to their societies, the possibility of devastating floods was a continual worry. Ancient cultures were frequently hit by floods, famines, and diseases, among other natural disasters. Several important discoveries provide evidence for the historical basis of Noah's Ark and the deluge. David Allen Deal asserted to have found pieces of Noah's Ark in the late 1990s close to Mount Ararat in Turkey, the site thought to be the Ark's ultimate resting place. The allegation is supported by the dimensions of the ruins, which match those mentioned in ancient literature. The flood story is supported historically by ancient documents like the Sumerian king list. This list, which was found amidst the ancient Sumerian ruins, contains the names of all the monarchs from the beginning of time. Interestingly, monarchs who governed before the flood lived for hundreds of years, and those who ruled afterward lived for a similar amount of time to current times. This discrepancy points to a substantial change in human longevity that may have been caused by the flood. Excavated during the 1940s, the Dead Sea Scrolls comprise comprehensive narratives of biblical occurrences, encompassing details about Noah's Ark and the deluge. These antiquated writings bolster the biblical story by offering insights into the Ark's design and navigation. In addition, a great number of underwater cities have been found throughout the world. Many of these underwater cities were there throughout the Great Flood, and the biblical account of the deluge is consistent with their submersion. Additional proof for the flood theory comes from the relationship between the ages of these towns and the flood. These results provide a strong case for the historical basis of Noah's Ark and the flood, as does the pervasiveness of flood myths throughout many cultures. The size of the Ark, the changing guidance given to Noah, and the widespread prevalence of flood myths all contribute to a deeper comprehension of this old tale. Thus, Noah's story represents an important historical and cultural phenomenon and serves as a key narrative in biblical tradition. Ancient flooding occurrences are further supported by chevrons, which are unique geological formations that indicate former water activity. We have found these formations much above present sea levels, indicating extensive flooding in the distant past. These formations were formed by tremendous water flow. A lengthy history of flooding was suggested by the discovery of many chevrons in 2004 in the hilly regions of Madagascar by researchers. Large-scale, prehistoric floods that fit the biblical story of Noah's flood are suggested by the existence of these chevrons in highland regions. It has taken some time for the biblical flood story and Noah's Ark to gain widespread scientific acceptance, despite these discoveries. The notion of a worldwide deluge and the reality of the Ark were mocked and disregarded for many years. That perspective has changed, though, as more and more data point to the flood story. The idea that the story of the flood, as it is told in several ancient scriptures, might have historical roots is something that mainstream scholars are starting to accept. Although there is still much disagreement about it, this acceptance gives the account more credibility. Particularly difficult is the search for tangible proof of Noah's Ark. Naturally occurring material degradation over thousands of years is one major obstacle. Since cypress naturally decays with time, it is highly unlikely that intact portions of the Ark, if it was built from this material as some have suggested, will be discovered. The valuable timber on the Ark would have been disassembled and used in reconstruction efforts, according to biologist Todd Wood, who has expressed concerns about what would have happened to it after the flood. The wood from the Ark would have been a highly valued resource for building houses and other structures after such a devastating occurrence, with forests decimated and new trees scarce. The possibility that the Ark was repurposed is supported by this pragmatic factor, which also makes it less likely that any physical traces will be found. The hunt for proof keeps academics and enthusiasts interested, even in the face of widespread skepticism in the scientific community. Struggling to find anything resembling boats that might be pieces of the Ark, explorers continue to scale the rough summits of mountains in Iran and Turkey. To close the gap between historical reality and ancient narratives is the motivation for the search for such evidence. An authentic boat structure would be a significant discovery in these high-altitude areas, and it might change our knowledge of historical flood occurrences and how they affected human history. The likelihood of a worldwide flood or Noah's Ark does not, however, vanish, because there isn't any hard physical proof of either. The insufficiency of physical relics only serves to emphasize the richness and intricacy of history, deeply rooted in scientific curiosity as well as a desire to comprehend our religious and historical roots. The hunt for Noah's Ark and proof of the Great Flood continues to this day. Inspiring and captivating academics, archaeologists, and enthusiasts is the account of Noah's Ark, regardless of the discovery of tangible proof. Humans' general fascination with old tales and their possible links to historical truths is reflected in the continuous search for evidence. For a great number of people, Noah's Ark holds significance that goes beyond the necessity of tangible objects. Despite the physical proof, the moral and theological themes of the story maintain their relevance, strengthening belief in God's salvation and judgment. Post your ideas in the comments section below.